How's everybody doing? Hope you're doing well. Just getting everything pulled up here and all loaded up. What's up, Mr. Gooch? If you're here, I don't know if you're here. I know bro's on right now. And I hope I can provide some amazing background noise. I hope everybody's doing well. Katrina, how are you, Katrina? It's good to see you. And Leighton, if you're there, it's good to see you as well. How was your day today? Has everybody been just as excited for this as I've been on this Monday? Read through a lot already. Linda's still at school. Excellent. School is great. I gotta get used to that time difference, I think. Let's see here. So that when I lean back, I don't go out of frame. There we go. So what's his favorite subject in school? Does he have a favorite? Lori! I hope you're doing well, boo. Appreciate you being here. I hope your day's been well. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, perfect. Don't know why I've never done that before. We'll give it just a couple of minutes here, just in case anybody's coming in and getting set up. Just fine. Super hot though, you're telling me. It is about 111 outside right now. Mathematics and art. Excellent, excellent. Morning, morning. Halian. Hope you're doing well, Halian. Good morning. Thanks for joining. I love math. When the alphabet and shape started getting into math, it started getting a little uninteresting. But, of course, you know I love the art, so. I was dying at 84. Oh no. Oh no. Going to the vending machine, BRB. Good luck, Alien. I hope you're able to find something. I hope you are able to find something, and I am super excited. I did get a little bit early the box of Dark Phantasm that was supposed to be here before Saturday. Yeah, it showed up today. And so I do have that and ready to go on Thursday, and I am just really excited to get into it. I know that it's artwork that we've already seen, as I think it is half of Lost Origin. So, yeah, it's going to be real fun. But we have that in the links. Dying at 84, oh no. And you have the humidity to compete with too, huh? Because we don't have the humidity to compete with, really. And what's everybody drinking tonight? Or today? As it were. I know it's about afternoon. Morning afternoon in most places. Which is just fine because my tea needs to cool. Better. But I can't burn my tongue. I use that for talking. Happiest Monday, all. What's up, Prophet? I hope you're doing well tonight, fam. It's good to see you. It is good to see you. And yes, it was a happiest of Mondays. I will start with a little story time for my personal day. I did go back to work today, and if you've ever taken some time away from work, that first day back is always going to be, I don't want to say like the roughest, but it was definitely like, oh yeah, this is what I do. This is what I do. So it came right back. Likewise. Excellent. So yeah, got right back into it. I think I also need to find a way to raise this. Otherwise I'm going to keep doing this and that this looks off. No, I'm not going to do it right now because we're about to start going here. And of course, as always, I do want to say that one, I'm Kev the Poke Ghost. I should always start with an intro. And typically we do open Pokemon cards and or go through the cards and appreciate the art, hunting for artists and bringing awareness to it. But we did have this idea some time ago where I just wanted to read. And I figured we could go through old stories, I would read them out loud, and we could all enjoy Monday night together, whether you're using it for bedtime, background noise, morning coffee. I just wanted to have a nice space where we could just sit, chill, and although there isn't going to be any like Pokemon related in here, I figured that literature is just as beautiful as actual art is. And so Mondays on the in Poke Ghost Town is pretty well reserved for reading of the literature. But rest assured, we are going to get back into the streaming like normal. Every Thursday and Saturday is our normal streaming hours, and I am working on a couple more. So, thank you indeed. Thank you indeed. Yeah, and I gotta say, I really do love my job. I like my job a lot. But I think it's because it's so challenging and it's always constantly putting that on that makes me always feel like I'm behind, which is how I never get behind. So yeah, I do enjoy my job. It taught me a lot over these 10 years I've been working there. Alright, and with that, what we're going to do is we're going to get right back into it. And if we do remember where we ended last time, we did end with a very famous fairy tale character, Humpty Dumpty. And the last thing we can remember is Humpty Dumpty having quite a great fall. No spoilers there. We did the first 6 chapters of Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, and we are going to get into the last 6 chapters of Through the Looking Glass. We should be able to finish it today. And then it just comes next of what are we going to read for next Monday? What are we going to start? I would love to hear your suggestions. If there is any very, very old stories or books that you would like to read or hear read, please let me know. The only catch, per se, is it has to be in the public domain. It can't be copywritten. And I would love to do that. So, Mishans, what's up? Good morning at work. Stopping by, say hi. I hope you have an amazing day at work, Mishans. Super appreciate you stopping by, fam. We're about to get into the book. I just realized that my hair needs to be cut. My cowlick's starting to stick out. But we're going to get into the reading today. But I hope that you're doing well, Mishans. I really do appreciate you dropping in, and good morning to you. Okay, ready for stories? Okay. And did you find anything, Haley? You said you went to the vending machine. And yes, we're going to get into it. Starting with Chapter 7, The Lion and the Unicorn. Lori, check your Discord, please. Says Team Missions. Alright, excellent. Here we go. Let's get into it. Typically we've been running these streams right around that 2-hour mark, so let's go ahead and try and get through this within that time. Of course, don't feel obligated to stay through the whole thing. That's why it's recorded. And I do just want a fair warning. I can't really see or notice the chat when I'm reading, so I apologize if I miss anything or miss something right away, but I will stop between chapters sip the tea and connect with you in the chat. So really appreciate you all being here and sharing this moment with me, and I hope you all enjoy this as much as I enjoy doing it with you. Chapter 7, The Lion and the Unicorn. The next moment, soldiers came running through the wood, at first in 3s, then 10s or 20 together, and at last in such crowds that they seemed to fill the whole forest. Alice got behind a tree, for fear of being run over, and watched them go by. She thought that in all her life she had never seen soldiers so uncertain on their feet. They were always tripping over something or another, and whenever one went down, several more always fell over with him, so that the ground was covered with little heaps of men. Then came the horses. Having 4 feet, these managed rather better than the foot soldiers, but even they stumbled now and then, and it seemed to be a regular rule that whenever a horse stumbled, the rider fell off instantly. The confusion got worse every moment, and Alice was very glad to get out of the wood into an open place, where she found the White King seated on the ground, busily writing in his memorandum book. "I've sent them all," the king cried in a tone of delight on seeing Alice. "Did you happen to meet any soldiers, my dear, as you came through the wood?" "Yes, I did," said Alice. "Several thousand, I should think." 4,207. That's the exact number," the king said, referring to his book. "You couldn't send all the horses, you know, because 2 of them are wanted in the game, and I hadn't sent the 2 messengers either. They're both gone into the town. Just look along the road and tell me if you can see either of them." "I see nobody on the road," said Alice. "I only wish I had such eyes," the king remarked in his fretful tone, "to be able to see nobody. And at that distance, too. Why, it's as much as I can do to see real people by this light." All this was lost on Alice, who was still looking intently along the road, shading her eyes with one hand. "I see somebody now," she exclaimed at last. "But he's coming very slowly. And what curious attitudes he goes into." For the messenger kept skipping up and down and wriggling like an eel as he came along, with his great hands spread out like fins on each side. "Not at all," said the king. "He's an Anglo-Saxon messenger, and all those Anglo-Saxon attitudes." Attitudes. That's funny. "He only does them when he's happy. His name is Haiga." He pronounced it as to rhyme with mayor. So higher. "I love my love with an H." Alice couldn't help beginning, "Because he is happy. I hate him with an H, because he is hideous. I feed him with ham sandwiches and hay. His name is Haya. And he lives on a hill," the king remarked simply, without the least idea of what he was joining in on the game. While Alice was still hesitating for the name of a town beginning with H, the other messenger called Hata. "I must have 2, you know, to come and go, one to come and one to go." "I beg your pardon," said Alice. "It isn't respectable to beg," said the king. "I only meant that I didn't understand," said Alice, "why one has to come and one has to go." "Don't I tell you?" the king repeated impatiently. "I must have 2 to fetch and carry, one to fetch and one to carry." At this moment the messenger arrived. He was far too much out of breath to say a word, and could only wave his hands about, and make the most fearful faces at the poor king. "This young lady loves you with an H," the king said, introducing Alice in the hope of turning off the messenger's attention from him. But it was of no use. The Anglo-Saxon attitudes only got more extraordinary every moment, while the great eyes rolled wildly from side to side. "You alarm me," said the king. "I feel faint. Give me a ham sandwich." On which the messenger, to Alice's great amusement, opened a bag and hung around his neck, and handed a sandwich to the king, who devoured it greedily. "Another sandwich," said the king. "There's nothing but hay left now," said the messenger, peeping into the bag. "Hay, then," the king murmured in a faint whisper. Alice was glad to see that it revived him a good deal. "There's nothing like eating hay when you're faint," he remarked to her as he munched away. "I should think throwing cold water over you would be better," Alice suggested. "Or some sal volatile?" I didn't say there was nothing better, the king replied. I said there's nothing like it, which Alice did not venture to deny. Who did you pass on the road? The king went on, holding out his hand to the messenger for some more hay. Nobody, said the messenger. Quite right, said the king. This young lady saw him too. So, of course, nobody walks slower than you. I do my best, the messenger said in a sullen tone. I'm sure nobody walks faster than I do. He can't do that, said the king, or else he'd have been here first. However, now you've got your breath. You may tell us what happened in the town. I'll whisper it, said the messenger, putting his hands to his mouth in the shape of a trumpet and stooping so as to get close to the king's ear. Alice was sorry for this, as she wanted to hear the news too. However, instead of whispering, he simply shouted at the top of his voice, "They're at it again!" "Do you call that a whisper?" cried the poor king, jumping up and shaking himself. "If you do such a thing again, I'll have you buttered." It went through and through my head like an earthquake. It would have been a very tiny earthquake, thought Alice. Who are you at again? She ventured to ask. Why, the lion and the unicorn, of course, said the king. Fighting for the crown? Yes, to be sure, said the king. And the best joke is that it's my crown all the while. Let's run and see them. And they trotted off, Alice repeating to herself as she ran the words of an old song. The lion and the unicorn were fighting for the crown. The lion beat the unicorn all around the town. Some gave them white bread, some gave them brown. Some gave them plum cake and drummed them out of town. Does that one that wins get the crown? She asked, as well as she could, for the run was putting her quite out of breath. Dear me, no, said the king. What an idea. Would you be good enough? Alice panted out after running a little further. To stop a minute, just to get one's breath again? I'm good enough, the king said. Only I'm not strong enough. You see, a minute goes by so fearfully quick, you might as well try to stop the bandersnatch. Alice had no more breath for talking, so they trotted on in silence till they came to a sight of a great crowd, in the middle of which the lion and the unicorn were fighting. They were in such a cloud of dust that at first Alice could not make out which was which, but she soon managed to distinguish the unicorn by his horn. They placed themselves close to where Hata, the other messenger, was standing watching the fight, with a cup of tea in one hand and a piece of bread and butter in the other. He's only just out of prison, and he hadn't finished his tea when he was sent in, Haya whispered to Alice. And they only gave him oyster shells in there. So you see, he's very hungry and thirsty. How are you, dear child? He went on, putting his arm affectionately around Hata's neck. Hata looked round and nodded, and went on with his bread and butter. Were you happy in prison, dear child? Said Haya. Hata looked round once more, and this time a tear or two trickled down his cheek, but not a word would he say. Speak, can't you? Haya cried impatiently, but Hata only munched away and drank some more tea. Speak, won't you? Cried the king. How are they getting on with the fight? Hata made a desperate effort and swallowed a large piece of bread and butter. They're getting on very well, he said in a choking voice. Each of them has been down about 87 times. Then I suppose they'll soon bring the white bread and the brown? Alice ventured to remark. It's waiting for him now, said Hata. This is a bit of it as I'm eating. There was a pause in the fight just then, and the lion and the unicorn sat down, panting, while the king called out. 10 minutes allowed for refreshments. Haya and Hata set to work at once, carrying around trays of white and brown bread. Alice took a piece to taste, but it was very dry. I don't think they'll fight any more today, the king said to Hata. Go and order the drums to begin, and Hata went bounding away like a grasshopper. For a minute or two, Alice stood silent, watching him. Suddenly, she brightened up. Look, look, she cried, pointing eagerly. There's the White Queen running across the country." She came flying out of the woods, over yonder. How fast those queens can run. "There's some enemy after her, no doubt," the king said, without even looking around. "That wood's full of them." "But aren't you going to run and help her?" Alice asked, very much surprised at his taking it so quietly. No use, said the king. "She runs so fearfully quick." "You might as well try to catch a Bandersnatch. But I'll make a memorandum about her if you like. She's a dear good creature." He repeated softly to himself as he opened his memorandum book. "Do you spell creature with a double E?" At this moment, the unicorn sauntered by them, with his hands in his pockets. I had the best of it this time," he said to the king, just glancing at him as he passed. A little, the king replied, rather nervously. "You shouldn't have run through him with your horn, you know." "It didn't hurt him," the unicorn said carelessly, and he was going on when his eye happened to fall upon Alice. He turned around instantly, and stood for some time, looking at her with the air of the deepest disgust. "What is this?" he said at last. "This is a child," Haya replied eagerly, coming in front of Alice to introduce her, and spreading out both his hands towards her in an Anglo-Saxon attitude. "We only found it today. It's as large as life and twice as natural." "I always thought they were fabulous monsters," said the unicorn. "Is it alive? It can talk," said Haya solemnly. The unicorn looked dreamily at Alice and said, "Talk, child." Alice could not help her lips curling up into a smile as it began. "Do you know, I always thought unicorns were fabulous monsters, too. I never saw one alive before." "Well, now that we have seen each other," said the unicorn, "if you'll believe in me, I'll believe in you. Is that a bargain?" "Yes, if you'd like," said Alice. "Come, fetch out the plum cake, old man." The unicorn went on, turning from her to the king. "None of your brown bread for me." Certainly, the king muttered, and beckoned to Haya. "Open the bag," he whispered. "Quick! Not that one. That's full of hay." Haya took a large cake out of the bag and gave it to Alice to hold, while he got out a dish and carving knife. How they all came out of it, Alice couldn't guess. It was just like a conjuring trick, she thought. The lion had joined them while this was going on. He looked very tired and sleepy, and his eyes were half shut. "What's this?" he said, blinking lazily at Alice and speaking in a deep, hollow tone that sounded like the tolling of a great bell. "Ah, what is it now?" the unicorn cried eagerly. "You'll never guess. I couldn't." The lion looked at Alice wearily. "Are you animal, or vegetable, or mineral?" he said, yawning at every other word. "It's a fabulous monster," the unicorn cried out before Alice could reply. "Then hand around the plum cake, monster," the lion said, lying down and putting his chin on his paws. "And sit down, both of you," to the king and the unicorn. "Fair play with the cake, you know." The king was evidently very uncomfortable at having to sit down between the two great creatures, but there was no other place for him. "What a fight we might have for the crown now," the unicorn said, looking slyly up at the crown, which the poor king was nearly shaking off his head, he trembled so much. "I should win easy," said the lion. "I'm not so sure of that," said the unicorn. "Why, I beat you all round the town, you chicken," the lion replied angrily, half getting up as he spoke. Here the king interrupted to prevent the quarrel going on. He was very nervous, and his voice quite quivered. "All round the town?" he said. "That's a good long way. Did you go by the old bridge or the marketplace? You get the best view by the old bridge." "I'm sure I don't know," the lion growled out as he laid down again. There was too much dust to see anything. What a time the monster is, cutting up that cake. Alice had seated herself on the bank of a little brook, with a great dish on her knees, and was sawing away diligently with the knife "It's very provoking," she said, in reply to the lion. She was getting quite used to being called the monster. "I've cut several slices already, but they always join on again." "You don't know how to manage looking-glass cakes," the unicorn remarked. "Hand it round first, and cut it afterwards." This sounded nonsense, but Alice very obediently got up and carried the dish around, and the cake divided itself into 3 pieces as she did so. "Now cut it up," said the lion, as she returned to her place with an empty dish. "I say, this isn't fair," cried the unicorn, as Alice sat down with her knife in hand, very much puzzled how to begin. "The monster has given the lion twice as much as me." "She kept none for herself anyhow," said the lion. "Do you like plum cake, monster?" But before Alice could answer, the drums began. Where the noise came from, she couldn't make out. The air seemed full of it, and it rang through and through her head till she felt quite deafened. She started to her feet and sprang across the little brook in her terror, and had just time to see the lion and unicorn rise to their feet with angry looks at being interrupted in the feast, before she dropped to her knees and put her hands over her ears, vainly trying to shut out all the dreadful uproar. "If that doesn't drum them out of town," she thought to herself, "nothing ever will." Alright, first chapter down. Feeling the ring rust wearing off. My eyes are, however, starting to go. I appreciate y'all being here. Who popped in? Haley and Maddie G. Pokey Girl Jessie. Radio Trainer. In and Out fam. Much love everyone. And Kev. Much love radio. I appreciate you popping in fam. What's up Cameron? Hope you're doing well. Meeting's gonna have you muted for a little bit. No worries at all, Haley, even though you can't hear this or what I'm saying now. Still working on my Jessie cosplay. Excellent. Super happy that you guys popped in. I really appreciate you. We just got through reading about the Lion and the Unicorn, which are, I guess, an old fairy tale. I never heard of the Lion and the Unicorn. Have you? Let me know. Fighting over white and brown bread, or eating white and brown bread. Can't wait to see that cosplay in full force, Jesse. Moving into Chapter 8. Chapter 8. It's my own invention. Let's see if I have any pictures from the Lion and the Unicorn. There we go. This was the Lion and the Unicorn. Thought that was a pretty cute picture. Thanks, I'm working really hard on it. Well, you work really hard on everything that you do, Jess, and I've got no doubt that it's going to turn out stellar. And you'll be able to see that work reflected in the final outcome. You're really good at what you do. It's my own invention. After a while, the noise seemed gradually to die away, till all was dead, and Alice lifted up her head in some alarm. There was no one to be seen, and her first thought was she must have been dreaming about the Lion and the Unicorn, and those queer Anglo-Saxon messengers. However, there was a great dish still laying at her feet, on which she still tried to cut the plum cake. So I wasn't dreaming after all, she said to herself, unless we're all part of the same dream. Only I do hope it's my dream, and not the Red King's. I don't like belonging to another person's dream. She went on in a rather complaining tone. I have a great mind to go and wake him, and see what happens. At this moment, her thoughts were interrupted by a loud shouting of, "Ahoy, ahoy, check!" And a knight, dressed in crimson armor, came galloping down upon her, brandishing a great club. Just as he reached her, the horse stopped suddenly. "You're my prisoner," the knight cried as he tumbled off his horse. Startled as she was, Alice was more frightened for him than for herself at the moment, and watched him with some anxiety as he mounted again. As soon as he was comfortably in the saddle, he began once more, "You're my—" But here another voice broke in, "Ahoy, ahoy, check!" and Alice looked around in some surprise for the new enemy. This time it was a white knight. He drew up at Alice's side and tumbled off his horse just as the red knight had done. And he got on again, and the two knights sat and looked at each other for some time without speaking. Alice looked from one to the other in some bewilderment. "She's my prisoner, you know," the red knight said at last. "Yes, but then I came and rescued her," the white knight replied. "Well, we must fight for her then," said the red knight, as he took up his helmet, which hung from the saddle, and was something in the shape of a horse's head, and put it on. "You will observe the rules of battle, of course," the white knight remarked, putting on his helmet too. "I always do," said the red knight, and they began banging away at each other in such fury that Alice got behind a tree to be out of the way of the blows. "I wonder now what the rules of battle are," she said to herself, as she watched the fight, timidly peeping out from her hiding place. "One rule seems to be that if one knight hits the other, he knocks him off his horse, and if he misses, he tumbles off himself. And another rule seems to be that they hold their clubs with their arms as if they were Punch and Judy. What a noise they make when they tumble, just like a whole set of fire irons falling into a fender. And how quiet the horses are. They let them get on and off of them just as if they were tables." Another rule of battle that Alice had not noticed seemed to be that they always fall on their heads, and the battle ended with their both falling off in this way side by side. When they got up again, they shook hands, and then the red knight mounted and galloped off. "It was a glorious victory, wasn't it?" said the white knight, as he came up panting. "I don't know," said Alice doubtfully. "I don't want to be anybody's prisoner. I want to be a queen." "So you will, when you cross to the next brook," said the white knight. "I'll see you safe to the other end of the wood, and then I must go back, you know. That's the end of my move." "Thank you very much," said Alice. "May I help you off with your helmet?" It was evidently more than he could manage by himself. However, she managed to shake him out of it at last. "Now one can breathe more easily," said the knight, putting back his shaggy hair with both hands and turning his gentle face and large, mild eyes to Alice. She thought she had never seen such a strange-looking soldier in all her life. He was also dressed in tin armor, which seemed to fit him very badly, and he had a queer-shaped little deal box fastened across his shoulders upside down, and with the lid hanging open. Alice looked at it with great curiosity. "I see you admiring my little box," the knight said in a friendly tone. "It's my own invention, to keep clothes and sandwiches in. You see, I carry it upside down so that the rain can't get in." Sound reasoning? "But the things can get out," Alice gently remarked. "Do you know the lid's open?" "I didn't know it," the knight said. A shade of vexation passed over his face. "Then all the things must have fallen out, and the box is of no use without them." He unfastened it as he spoke, and was just going to throw it into the bushes when a sudden thought seemed to strike him, and he hung it carefully on a tree. "Can you guess why I did that?" he said to Alice. Alice shook her head. "In hopes some bees may make a nest in it. Then I should get the honey." "But you've got a beehive or something like one fastened to the saddle," said Alice. "Yes, it's a very good beehive," the knight said in a discontented tone. "One of the best kind, but not a single bee has come near it yet. And the other thing is a mouse trap. I suppose the mice keep the bees out, or the bees keep the mice out. I don't know which." "I was wondering what the mouse trap was for," said Alice. "It isn't very likely there would be any mice on the horse's back." "Not very likely, perhaps," said the knight. But if they do come, I don't choose to have them running all about. You see, he went on after a pause, it's as well to be provided for everything. That's the reason the horse has all those anklets on its feet. But what are they for? Alice asked in a tone of great curiosity. To guard against the bites of sharks, the knight replied. It's an invention of my own, and now help me on. I'll go on without you to the end of the wood. I'll go with you to the end of the wood. What's the dish for? It's meant for plum cake, said Alice. We'd better take it with us, said the knight. It'll come in handy if we find any plum cake. Help me to get it into this bag. This took a long time to manage, though Alice held the bag open very carefully because the knight was so very awkward in putting in the dish. The first 2 or 3 times that he tried, he fell in himself instead. It's rather tight fit, you see, he said, and they got it in at last. It's a rather tight fit, you see, he said, and they got it in at... Oh, I'm reading again. There are so many candlesticks in the bag. And he hung it to the saddle, which was already loaded with bunches of carrots and fire irons and many other things. I hope you've got your hair well fastened on, he continued as they set off. Only in the usual way, Alice said, smiling. That's hardly enough, he said anxiously. You see, the wind is so very strong here. It's as strong as soup. Have you invented a plan for keeping the hair from being blown off? Alice inquired. Oh, they misspelled the plan. Not yet, said the knight. But I've got a plan for keeping it from falling off. I should like to hear it very much. First, you take an upright stick, said the knight. Then you make your hair creep up it, like a fruit tree. Now, the reason hair falls off is because it hangs down. Things never fall upward, you know. It's a plan of my own invention. You may try it if you like. It didn't sound a comfortable plan, Alice thought, and for a few minutes she walked on in silence, puzzling over the idea and every now and then stopping to help the poor knight, who certainly was not a good rider. Whenever the horse stopped, which it did very often, he fell off in front, and whenever they went on again, which it generally did rather suddenly, he fell off backwards. Otherwise, he kept on pretty well, except that he had a habit of now and then falling off sideways, and as he generally did this on the side on which Alice was walking, she soon found that it was the best plan not to walk quite close to the horse. I'm afraid you've not had much practice in riding, she ventured to say, as she was helping him up from his 5th tumble. The knight looked very much surprised and a little offended at the remark. What makes you say that? He asked as he scrambled back into the saddle, keeping hold of Alice's hair with one hand to save himself from falling over the other side. Because people don't fall off quite so often when they have had much practice. I've had plenty of practice, the knight said, and very gravely. Plenty of practice. Alice could think of nothing better to say than indeed, but she said it as heartily as she could. They went on a little way in silence after this, the knight with his eyes shut, muttering to himself, and Alice watching anxiously for the next tumble. The great art of riding, the knight suddenly began in a loud voice, waving his right arm as he spoke, is to keep... Here the silence ended as suddenly as it began, as the knight fell heavily on top of his head exactly in the path where Alice was walking. She was quite frightened this time, and said in an anxious tone as she picked him up, I hope no bones are broken. None to speak of, the knight said, as if he didn't mind breaking 2 or 3 of them. The great art of riding, as I was saying, is to keep your balance properly, like this, you know. And he let go the bridle, and stretched out both arms to show Alice what he meant. And this time he fell flat on his back, right under the horse's feet. Plenty of practice, he went on repeating, all the time that Alice was getting him on his feet again. Plenty of practice. It's too ridiculous, cried Alice, losing all her patience this time. You ought to have a wooden horse on wheels, that you ought. Does that kind go smoothly? the knight asked in a tone of great interest, clasping his arms around the horse's necks as he spoke, just in time to save himself from tumbling off again. Much more smoothly than a live horse, Alice said, with a little scream of laughter in spite of all she could to prevent it. I'll get one, the knight said thoughtfully to himself. One or two, several. There was a short silence after this, and then the knight went on again. I'm a great hand at inventing things. Now, I dare say you noticed, the last time you picked me up, that I was looking rather thoughtful. You were a little grave, said Alice. Well, just then I was inventing a new way of getting over a gate. Would you like to hear it? Very much indeed, Alice said politely. I'll tell you how I came to think of it, said the knight. You see, I said to myself, the only difficulty is with the feet. The head is high enough to already. Now, first I put my head on top of the gate, and the head's high enough. Then I stand on my head. Then the feet are high enough, you see. Then I'm over, you see. Yes, I suppose you'd be over when that was done, Alice said thoughtfully. But don't you think it would be rather hard? I hadn't tried it yet, the knight said gravely, so I can't tell for certain. But I'm afraid it would be a little hard. He looked so vexed at the idea that Alice changed the subject hastily. What a curious helmet you've got, she said cheerfully. Is that your invention, too? The knight looked down proudly at his helmet, which hung from the saddle. Yes, he said, but I've invented a better one than that. Like a sugar loaf. When I used to wear it, if I fell off the horse, it always touched the ground directly, so I had very little way to fall, you see. But there was the danger of falling into it, to be sure. That happened to me once. And the worst of it was, before I could get out again, the other white knight came and put it on. He thought it was his helmet. The knight looked so solemn about it that Alice did not dare to laugh. I'm afraid you must have heard him, she said in a trembling voice, being on top of his head. I had to kick him, of course, the knight said, very seriously. And then he took the helmet off again, but it took hours and hours to get me out. I was as fast as lightning, you know. But that's a different kind of fastness, Alice objected. The knight shook his head. It was all kinds of fastness with me, I can assure you, he said. He raised his hands in some excitement as he said this, and instantly rolled out of the saddle and fell headlong into a deep ditch. Alice ran to the side of the ditch to look for him. She was rather startled by the fall, as for some time he had kept on very well, and she was afraid that he really was hurt this time. However, though she could see nothing but the soles of his feet, she was much relieved to hear that he was talking on in his usual tone. All kinds of fastness, he repeated. But it was careless of him to put another man's helmet on, with a man in it, too. How can you go on talking so quietly, head downwards? Alice asked, as she dragged him out by the feet and laid him in a heap on the bank. The knight looked surprised at the question. What does it matter where my body happens to be? He said. My mind goes on working all the same. In fact, the more head downwards I am, the more I keep inventing new things. Now the cleverest thing of the sort that I ever did, he went on after a pause, was inventing a new pudding during the meat course. In time to have it cooked for the next course? Said Alice. Well, that was quick work, certainly. Well, not the next course, said the knight, in a slow, thoughtful tone. No, certainly not the next course. Then it would have to be the next day, I suppose. You wouldn't have 2 pudding courses in one dinner. Well, not the next day, the knight repeated as before. Not the next day. In fact, he went on, holding his head down, and his voice getting lower and lower, I don't believe that pudding ever was cooked. In fact, I don't believe that pudding ever will be cooked. And yet it was so very clever pudding to invent. What did you mean it to be made of? Alice asked, hoping to cheer him up, for the poor knight seemed quite low-spirited about it. It began with blotting paper, the knight answered with a groan. That wouldn't be very nice, I'm afraid. Not very nice alone, he interrupted, quite eagerly. But you've no idea what difference it makes mixing it with other things, such as gunpowder and sealing wax. And here I must leave you. They had just come to the end of the wood. Alice could only look puzzled. She was thinking of the pudding. You are sad, the knight said in an anxious tone. Let me sing you a song to comfort you. Is it very long? Alice asked, for she had heard a good deal of poetry that day. It's long, said the knight, but it's very, very beautiful. Everyone that hears me sing it, either it brings tears to their eyes, or else what? Said Alice, for the knight had made a sudden pause. Or else it doesn't, you know. The name of the song is called Haddock's Eyes. Oh, that's the name of the song, is it? Alice said, trying to feel interested. No, you don't understand, the knight said, looking a little vexed. That's what the name is called. The name really is the aged man. Then I ought to have said, that's what the song is called, Alice corrected herself. No, you oughtn't. That's quite another thing. The song is called Ways and Means, but that's only what it's called, you know. Well, what is the song, then? Said Alice, who was by this time completely bewildered. I was coming to that, the knight said. The song really is A Sittin' on a Gate, and the tune's my own invention. So saying, he stopped his horse and let the reins fall on its neck, then slowly, beating time with one hand, and with a faint smile lighting up his gentle, foolish face, as if he enjoyed the music of a song, he began. Of all the strange things that Alice saw on her journey through the looking-glass, this was the one that she always remembered most clearly. Years afterward, she could bring the whole scene back again, as if it had been only yesterday. The mild blue eyes, the kindly smile of the night, the setting sun gleaming through his hair, the shining on his armor in a blaze of light that quite dazzled her. The horse quietly moving about with the reins hanging loose on his neck, cropping the grass at her feet, and the black shadows of the forest behind. All this she took in like a picture, as with one hand shading her eyes, she leaned against a tree, watching the strange pair and listening, in a half-dream, to the melancholy music of the song. But the tune isn't his own invention, she said to herself. Isn't I give thee all I can no more? She stood and listened very attentively, but no tears came to her eyes. Yay. I'll tell thee everything I can, there's little to relate. I saw an aged man a-sittin' on a gate. Who are you, aged man? I said. And how is it you live? And his answer trickled through my head like water through a sieve. He said, I look for butterflies that sleep among the wheat. I make them into mutton pies and sell them in the street. I sell them unto men, he said, who sail on stormy seas. And that's the way I get my bread, a trifle, if you please. But I was thinking of a plan to dye one's whiskers green, and always use no larger fan that they could not be seen. So having no reply to give to what the old man said, I cried, Come tell me how you live, and thumped him on the head. His accents mild took up at the tail. He said, I go my ways, and when I find a mountain rill, I set it in a blaze. And thence they make a stuff they call Rowland's Masker Oil, yet 2 halfpenny is all they give me for my toil. But I was thinking of a way to feed oneself on batter, to so go on from day to day, getting a little fatter. I shook him well from side to side until his face was blue. Come tell me how you live, I cried, and what is it you do? He said, I hunt for Haddock's eyes among the heathers bright. I work them into waistcoat buttons on the silent night. And these do not sell for gold or coin of silvery shine, but for a copper halfpenny, and that will purchase 9. I sometimes dig for buttered rolls, or set lime twigs for crabs. I sometimes search the grassy knolls for wheels of handsome cabs. And that's the way, he gave a wink, by which I get my wealth, and very gladly will I drink your honor's noble health. I heard him then, for I had just completed my design to keep the Mani bridge from rust by boiling it in wine. I thanked him much for telling me the way he got his wealth, but chiefly for his wish that he might drink my noble health. And now, if ever chance I put my fingers into glue, or madly squeeze a right-handed foot into a left-hand shoe, or if I drop upon my toe a very heavy weight, I weep for it remains so of that old man I used to know, whose look was mild, whose speech was slow, whose hair was whiter than the snow, whose face was very like a crow, with eyes like cinders all aglow, who seemed distracted with his woe, who rocked his body to and fro, and muttered mumbling and low, as if his mouth were full of dough, who snorted like a buffalo, that summer evening long ago, a-sittin' on a gate. As the knight sang the last words of the ballad, he gathered up his reins and turned his horse's head along the road by which they had come. "You've only a few yards to go," he said, "down the hill and over that little brook, and then you'll be a queen. But you'll stay and see me off first," he added, as Alice turned with an eager look in the direction of which he pointed. "I shan't be long. You'll wait and wave your handkerchief when I get to that turn in the road. I think that'll encourage me, you see." "Of course I'll wait," said Alice, "and thank you very much for coming so far, and for the song. I liked it very much." "I hope so," the knight said doubtfully. "But you didn't cry so much as I thought you would." So they shook hands, and then the knight rode slowly away into the forest. "It won't take long to see him off, I expect," Alice said to herself as she stood watching him. "There he goes, right on his head as usual. However, he gets on again pretty easily. That comes off having so many things hung around the horse." So she went on talking to herself as she watched the horse walking leisurely along the road, and the knight tumbling off, first on one side, then the other. After the fourth or fifth tumble, he reached the turn, and then she waved her handkerchief to him and waited till he was out of sight. "I hope it encouraged him," she said, and she turned to run down the hill. "And now for the last brook, and to be queen. How grand it sounds." A very few steps brought her to the edge of the brook. "The 8th square at last," she cried, as she bounded across and threw herself down to rest on a lawn as soft as moss, with little flower beds dotted about here and there. "Oh, how glad I am to get here! And what is this on my head?" she exclaimed in a tone of dismay, as she put her hands up to something very heavy that fitted tight all around her head. "But how can it have gotten there without my knowledge?" she said to herself, as she lifted it off and set it on her lap to make out what it could possibly be. It was a golden crown. Ha! That was fun. I like the poetry. So glad I caught this. What's up, Mama? I hope you're doing well. Hey, what's up, Johnny Knight? I appreciate you guys. I know I can't pay much attention to the chat when I'm reading. Meeks to Sneaks! What's going on, fam? How you doing? If you're still around. I just watched all the movies not too long ago, man. I wish I could make another one. Oh, yeah, the movies were great, but they were not these books. That's for sure. Love the poetry, too. I did, too. What's up, Garbage Fire? How you doing, fam? JB, I hope you're doing well, brother. I hope you're doing well. So good to see you all. See 7 of you listen. Yeah, the poem was pretty cool, too. It was meant to be a song, but I didn't know the rhythm, so I couldn't sing it to y'all. Plus, it was quite the story poem, I will say that. Cheers to y'all. Thanks so much for joining me for this, the last 6 chapters of Through the Looking Glass. We're moving into chapter 9 and moving right along. Chapter 9 is Queen Alice. I love you too, Mama. I appreciate you being here. Whew. "Well, this is grand," said Alice. "I never expected I should be a queen so soon. And I'll tell you what it is, your majesty," she went on in a severe tone, as she was always rather fond of scolding herself. It'll never do for you to be lolling about in the grass like that. Queens have to be dignified, you know. So she got up and walked about, rather stiffly just at first, as she was afraid that the crown might come off. But she comforted herself with the thought that there was nobody to see her. And if I really am queen, she said as she sat down, I shall be able to manage it quite well in time. Everything was happening so oddly that she didn't feel a bit surprised at finding the Red Queen and the White Queen sitting close to her, one on each side. She would have liked very much to ask them how they came there, but she feared it would not be quite civil. However, there would be no harm, she thought, in asking if the game was over. Please, would you tell me, she began, looking timidly at the Red Queen. Speak when you're spoken to, the Queen sharply interrupted her. But if everybody obeyed that rule, said Alice, who was always ready for a little argument, and if you only spoke when you were spoken to, and the other person always waited for you to begin, you see, nobody would say anything at all. So that... Ridiculous, cried the Queen. Why don't you see, child? Here she broke off with a frown, and after thinking for a minute, suddenly changed the subject of the conversation. What do you mean by, if you really are queen? What right do you have to call yourself so? You can't be a queen, you know, till you've passed the proper examination, and the sooner we begin it, the better. I only said if, poor Alice pleaded in a piteous tone. The two queens looked at each other, and the Red Queen remarked, with a little shudder, she says she only said if. But she said a great deal more than that, the White Queen moaned, wriggling her hands. Oh, ever so much more than that. So you did, you know, the Red Queen said to Alice. Always speak the truth, think before you speak, and write it down afterwards. I'm sure I didn't mean, Alice was beginning, but the Red Queen interrupted her impatiently. That's just what I complain of. You should have meant. What do you suppose is the use of a child without any meaning? Even a joke should have some meaning, and a child's more important than a joke, I'd hope. You couldn't deny that, even if you tried with both hands. I don't deny things with my hands, Alice objected. Nobody said you did, said the Red Queen. I said you couldn't if you tried. She's in that state of mind, said the White Queen, that she wants to deny something, only she doesn't know what to deny. A nasty, vicious temper, the Red Queen remarked, and then there was an uncomfortable silence for a minute or two. The Red Queen broke the silence by saying to the White Queen, I invite you to Alice's dinner party this afternoon. The White Queen smiled feebly and said, and I invite you. I didn't know I was to have a party at all, said Alice. But if there is to be one, I think I ought to invite the guests. We gave you the opportunity of doing it, the Red Queen remarked, but I dare say you've not had many lessons in manners yet. Manners are not taught in lessons, said Alice. Lessons teach you to do sums and things of that sort. Can you do addition? The White Queen asked. What's 1 and 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 1? I don't know, said Alice. I lost count. She can't do addition, the Red Queen interrupted. Can you do subtraction? Take 9 from 8. 9 from 8? I can't, you know, Alice replied very readily. But she can't do subtraction, said the White Queen. Can you do division? Divide a loaf by a knife? What's the answer to that? I suppose, Alice was beginning, but the Red Queen answered for her. Bread and butter, of course. Try another subtraction sum. Take a bone from a dog, what remains? Alice considered. The bone wouldn't remain, of course. If I took it, and the dog wouldn't remain, it would come to bite me, and I'm sure I shouldn't remain. Then you think nothing would remain, said the Red Queen. I think that's the answer. Wrong as usual, said the Red Queen. The dog's temper would remain. But I don't see how. Why, look here, the Red Queen cried. The dog would lose its temper, wouldn't it? Well, perhaps it would, Alice replied cautiously. Then if the dog went away, its temper would remain, the Queen exclaimed triumphantly. Alice said, as gravely as she could, they might go different ways, but she couldn't help thinking to herself, what dreadful nonsense are we talking? She can't do sums a bit, the Queen said together, with great emphasis. Can you do sums? Alice said, turning suddenly on the White Queen, for she didn't like being found at fault with so much. The Queen gasped and shut her eyes. I can do addition, she said, if you give me time, but I can't do subtraction under any circumstances. Of course you know your ABCs, said the Red Queen. To be sure I do, said Alice. So do I, said the White Queen. Well, often say it over together, dear, and I'll teach you a secret. I can read words of one letter. Isn't that grand? However, don't be discouraged. You'll come to it in time. Here the Red Queen began again. Can you answer useful questions? She said. How is bread made? I know that, Alice cried eagerly. You take some flour. Where do you pick the flour? The White Queen asked. In a garden or in the hedges? Well, it isn't picked at all, Alice exclaimed. It's ground. How many acres of ground? Said the White Queen. You mustn't leave out so many things. Fan her head, the Red Queen anxiously interrupted. She'll be feverish after thinking so much. So they set to work and fanned her with branches of leaves, till she had to beg them to leave off. It blew her hair about so. She's all right again now, said the Red Queen. Do you know languages? What's the French for fiddle-dee-dee? Fiddle-dee-dee is not English, Alice replied gravely. Whoever said it was, said the Red Queen. Alice thought she saw a way out of this difficulty this time. If you'll tell me what language fiddle-dee-dee is, I'll tell you the French for it, she exclaimed triumphantly. But the Red Queen drew herself up rather stiffly and said, Queens never make bargains. I wish queens never asked questions, Alice thought to herself. Don't let us quarrel, the White Queen said in an anxious tone. What is the cause of lightning? The cause of lightning, Alice said, very decidedly, for she felt quite certain about this, is the thunder. No, she hastily corrected herself. I meant the other way. It's too late to correct it, said the Red Queen. When you've once said a thing, that fixes it, and you must take the consequences. Which reminds me, the White Queen said, looking down and nervously clasping and unclasping her hands. We've had such a thunderstorm last Tuesday. I mean, one of the last set of Tuesdays, you know. Alice was puzzled. In our country, she remarked, there's only one day at a time. The Red Queen said, that's a poor thin way of doing things. Now here, we mostly have days and nights 2 or 3 times at a time. And sometimes in the winter, we take as many as 5 nights together for warmth, you know. Are 5 nights warmer than 1 night, then? Alice ventured to ask. 5 times as warm, of course. But they should be 5 times as cold by the same rule. Just so, cried the Red Queen. 5 times as warm and 5 times as cold. Just as I'm 5 times as rich as you are and 5 times as clever. Alice sighed and gave up. It's exactly like a riddle with no answer, she thought. Humpty Dumpty saw it too, the White Queen went on in a low voice, more as if she was talking to herself. He came to the door with the corkscrew in his hand. What did he want? Said the Red Queen. He said he would come in, the White Queen went on, because he was looking for a hippopotamus. Now, as it happened, there wasn't such a thing in the house that morning. Is there generally? Alice asked in an astonished tone. Well, only on Thursdays, said the Queen. I know what he came for, said Alice. He wanted to punish the fish because... Here the White Queen began again. It was such a thunderstorm. You can't think. She never could, you know, said the Red Queen. And part of the roof came off, and ever so much thunder got in, and it went rolling around the room in great lumps, and knocking over tables and things, till I was so frightened I couldn't remember my own name. Alice thought to herself, if never should try to remember my name in the middle of an accident, where would be the use of it? But she didn't say this aloud for fear of hurting the poor Queen's feelings. Your Majesty must excuse her, the Red Queen said to Alice, taking one of the White Queen's hands in her own and gently stroking it. She means well, but she can't help saying foolish things as a general rule. The White Queen looked timidly at Alice, who felt she ought to say something kind, but really couldn't think of anything at the moment. She never was really well brought up, the Red Queen went on. But it's amazing how good-tempered she is. Pat her on the head and see how pleased she'll be. But this was more than Alice could courage to do. A little kindness and putting her hair in papers would do wonders with her. The White Queen gave a deep sigh and laid her head on Alice's shoulder. "I am so sleepy," she moaned. "She's tired, poor thing," said the Red Queen. "Smooth her hair, lend her your nightcap, and sing her a soothing lullaby." "I hadn't got a nightcap with me," said Alice, as she tried to obey the first direction, "and I don't know any soothing lullabies." "I must do it myself, then," said the Red Queen, and she began. "Hush-a-bye, lady, in Alice's lap. Till the feast's ready, we've time for a nap. When the feast's over, we'll go to the ball. Red Queen, White Queen, and Alice and all." "And now you know the words," she added, as she put her head down on Alice's shoulder. "Just sing it through to me." I'm getting sleepy too. In another moment, both queens were fast asleep and snoring loud. "What am I to do?" exclaimed Alice, looking about in great perplexity, as first one round head and then the other rolled down from her shoulder and lay like a heavy lump in her lap. I don't think it ever happened before, that anyone had to take care of two queens asleep at once. No, not in all history of England. I couldn't, you know, because there never was more than one queen at a time. "Do wake up, you heavy things," she went on in an important tone, but there was no answer but her gentle snoring. The snoring got more distinct every minute and sounded more like a tune. At last she could even make out words, and she listened so eagerly that, when the two great heads suddenly vanished from her lap, she hardly missed them. She was standing before an arched doorway, over which were the words "Queen Alice" in large letters, and on each side of the arch there was a bell handle. One was marked "Visitor's Bell," and the other "Servant's Bell." "I'll wait till the song's over," thought Alice, "and then I'll ring the... Which bell must I ring?" she went on, very much puzzled by the names. "I'm not a visitor, and I'm not a servant. There ought to be one marked Queen, you know." Just then the door opened a little way, and a creature with a long beak put his head out for a moment and said, "No admittance till the week after next," and shut the door again with a bang. Alice knocked and rang in vain for a long time, but at last a very old frog, who was sitting under a tree, got up and hobbled slowly towards her. He was dressed in bright yellow and in enormous boots. "What is it now, Frog?" What is it now?" the frog said in a deep, hoarse whisper. Alice turned around, ready to find fault with anybody. "Where's the servant whose business it is to answer the door?" she began angrily. "Which door?" said the frog. Alice almost stamped with irritation at the slow draw in which he spoke. "This door, of course." The frog looked at the door with his large eyes for a minute. Then he went nearer and rubbed it with his thumb, as if he were trying to whether the paint would come off. Then he looked at Alice. "To answer the door," he said. "What is being asked of?" He was so hoarse that Alice could scarcely hear him. "I don't know what you mean," she said. "I speaks English, doesn't I?" the frog went on. "Or are you deaf?" "What did it ask you?" "Nothing," Alice said impatiently. "I've been knocking at it." Shouldn't do that, the frog murmured. "Wexes it, you know." Then he went up and gave the door a kick with one of his great feet. "You let it alone," he panted out as he hobbled back to his tree, "and it'll let you alone, you know." At this moment the door was flung open and a shrill voice was heard singing. To the looking-glass world, it was Alice that said, "I have a scepter in hand, I have a crown on my head. Yet the looking-glass creatures, whatever they be, come and dine with the Red Queen and White Queen and me." And hundreds of voices joined the chorus. "Then fill up the glasses as quick as you can, and sprinkle the table with buttons and bran. Put cats in the coffee and mice in the tea, and welcome Queen Alice with 30 times 3. Then followed a confused noise of cheering, and Alice thought to herself, 30 times 3 makes 90. I wonder if anyone's counting. In a minute there was silence again, and the same shrill voice sang another loud verse. "O looking-glass creatures," quoth Alice, "draw near. 'Tis an honour to see me, a favour to hear. 'Tis a privilege high to have dinner and tea, along with the Red Queen, the White Queen, and me." And then the chorus came again. "Then fill up the glasses with treacle and ink, or anything else that is pleasant to drink. Mix sand with the cider and wool with the wine, and welcome the Queen Alice with 90 times 9. 90 times 9, Alice repeated in despair. "Oh, that'll never be done. I'd better go in at once." And in she went, and there was a dead silence the moment she appeared. Alice glanced nervously along the table as she walked up the large hall and noticed that there were about 50 guests of all kinds. Some were animals, some birds, and there were even a few flowers among them. "I'm glad they've come without waiting to be asked," she thought. "I should have never known who were the right people to invite." There were 3 chairs at the head of the table. The Red and White Queens have already taken 2 of them, but the middle one was empty. Alice sat down at it, rather uncomfortable at the silence and longing for someone to speak. At last the Red Queen began. "You've missed the soup and fish," she said. "Put on the joint." And the waiter set a leg of mutton before Alice, who looked at it rather anxiously, as she had never had to carve a joint before. "You look a little shy. Let me introduce you to that leg of mutton," said the Red Queen. "Alice, mutton, mutton, Alice." The leg of mutton got up in the dish and made a little bow to Alice, and Alice returned the bow, not knowing whether to be frightened or amused. "May I give you a slice?" she said, taking up a knife and fork and looking from one queen to the other. "Certainly not," the Red Queen said very decidedly. "It isn't etiquette to cut anyone you've been introduced to. Remove the joint." And the waiters carried it off and brought a large plum pudding in its place. "I won't be introduced to the pudding, please," Alice said rather hastily, "or we shall get no dinner at all. May I give you some?" But the Red Queen looked sulkily and growled, "Pudding? Alice, Alice, pudding. Remove the pudding." And the waiters took it away so quickly that Alice couldn't return its bow. However, she didn't see why the Red Queen should be the only one to give orders. So, as an experiment, she called out, "Waiter, bring back the pudding." And there it was again in a moment, like a conjuring trick. It was so large that she couldn't help feeling a little shy with it, as she had just been with the mutton. However, she conquered her shyness by great effort and cut a slice and handed it to the Queen. "The impertinence," said the pudding. "I wonder how you'd like it if I were to cut a slice out of you, you creature." It spoke in a thick, sooty sort of voice, and Alice hadn't a word to say in reply. She could only sit and look at it and gasp. "Make a remark," said the Queen. "It's ridiculous to leave all conversation to the pudding." "Do you know I've had such a quantity of poetry repeated to me today," Alice began, a little frightened at finding that the moment she opened her lips there was dead silence and all eyes were fixed upon her. "And it's a very curious thing, I think. Every poem was about fishes in some way. Do you know why they're so fond of fishes all about here?" She spoke to the Red Queen, whose answer was a little wide of the mark. "As to fishes," she said very slowly and solemnly, putting her mouth close to Alice's ear, "Her White Majesty knows a lovely riddle, all in poetry, all about fishes. Shall she repeat it?" "Her Red Majesty is very kind to mention it," the White Queen murmured into Alice's other ear, in a voice like the cooing of a pigeon. "It would be such a treat, may I?" "Please do," Alice said politely. The White Queen laughed with delight and stroked Alice's cheek and began. "First, the fish must be caught. That is easy. A baby, I think, could have caught it. Next, the fish must be bought. That is easy. A penny, I think I would have bought it. Now, cook me the fish. That is easy. I will not take more than a minute. Let it lie in a dish. That is easy, because it is already in it. Bring it here. Let me sup. It is easy to set such a dish on the table. Take the dish cover up. Ah, that is so hard that I fear I'm unable. for it holds like glue, holds the lid to the dish while it lies in the middle, which is easiest to do, undish cover the fish or dish cover the riddle. Take a minute to think about it and then guess, said the Red Queen. Meanwhile, we'll drink to your health. Queen Alice's health, she screamed at the top of her voice, and all guests began to drink it directly, and very queerly they managed it. Some of them put their glasses upon their head, like extinguishers, and drank all that trickled down their faces. Others upset the decanters and drank the wine as it ran off the edges of the table, and 3 of them, who looked like kangaroo, stumbled into the dish of roast mutton and began eagerly lapping up the gravy, just like pigs in a trough, thought Alice. You ought to return thanks in a neat speech, the Red Queen said, frowning at Alice as she spoke. We must support you, you know, the White Queen whispered as Alice got up to do it, very obediently, but a little frightened. Thank you very much, she whispered in reply, but I can do quite well without. That wouldn't be at all a thing, the Red Queen said very decidedly, so Alice tried to submit to it with good grace. And they did push so, she said afterwards, when she was telling her sister the history of the feast. You would have thought they wanted to squeeze me flat. In fact, it was rather difficult for her to keep in her place while she made her speech. The 2 queens pushed her so, one on each side, and they nearly lifted her up into the air. I rise to return thanks, Alice began, and she really did rise as she spoke, several inches, but got a hold of the edge of the table and managed to pull herself down again. Take care of yourself, screamed the White Queen, seizing Alice's hair with both hands. Something's going to happen. And then, as Alice afterward described it, all sorts of things happened in a moment. The candles all grew up to a ceiling looking something like a bed of rushes with fireworks at the top. As to the bottles, they each took a pair of plates, which they hastily fitted on as wings, and so, with forks for legs, went fluttering about in all directions. And very like birds they look, Alice thought to herself, as well as she could in that dreadful confusion that was beginning. At this moment, she heard a horse laugh at her side, and turned to see what was the matter with the White Queen, but instead of the Queen, there was a leg of mutton sitting in her chair. Here I am, cried a voice from a soup tureen, and Alice turned again just in time to see the Queen's broad, good-natured face grinning at her for a moment over the edge of the tureen before she disappeared into the soup. There was not a moment to be lost. Already several of the guests were lying down in the dishes, and the soup ladle was walking up the table towards Alice's chair and beckoning to her impatiently to get out of its way. I can't stand this any longer, she cried, and she jumped up and seized the tablecloth with both hands. One good pull, and plates, dishes, guests, candles came crashing down together in a heap on the floor. And as for you, she went on, turning fiercely upon the Red Queen, whom she considered as the cause of all the mischief. But the Queen was no longer at her side. She had suddenly dwindled down to the size of a little doll, and was now on the table, merrily, running around and around after her own shawl, which she was trailing behind her. At any other time, Alice would have felt surprised at this, but she was far much too excited to be surprised at anything now. And for you, she repeated, catching hold of the little creature in the very act of jumping over a bottle, which had just lighted upon the table, I'll shake you into a kitten, that I will. Okay, shake it into a kitten. Oh, wow. Okay. That's something I didn't know. Chapter 10 and 11 are very short. Sorry. Hello. Love the poetry. Love listening to people saying my name wrong for 30 minutes. Who was saying your name wrong, Haley? Let me do this real quick. Sorry, just answering some messages. I don't know how hot it was for all of you today, but it got really hot here in Arizona. Really, really hot. Missed some of the middle, but it sounded great. I appreciate that, truly. No worries at all, because I'm about to do 2 chapters in about 4 seconds here. Ready? Chapter 10. Shaking. She took her off the table as she spoke. She shook her backwards and forwards with all her might. The Red Queen made no resistance whatever, only her face grew very small, and her eyes got large and green. And still, as Alice went on shaking her, she kept on growing shorter and fatter and softer and rounder and... Chapter 11. Waking. And it really was a kitten after all. There you go. That was chapter 10 and 11. 34, yowie wowie. So she took the Red Queen up and shook it into a kitten. I think that's banana sandwich. And that also means that we only have 1 chapter left now. And that is chapter 12, Which Dreamed It. And then maybe we can decide, we can take a second and talk about the book, of course, that we just read, or we can decide what book we're going to read next. And I do have a pretty good one in mind, and I'm curious to know your all's thoughts. But let me get through, well, not get through, let me read the final chapter of Through the Looking Glass, and we'll have a nice conversation if you guys are down for it. If you guys are down for it. But again, I really appreciate y'all being here, and if you haven't already, go ahead and smash the like. But y'all really make Mondays something to look forward to by getting to do this with y'all, so I really appreciate you guys. Which dreamed it? Good question. Your Red Majesty shouldn't purr so loud, Alice said, rubbing her eyes and addressing the kitten respectfully, yet with some severity. You woke me out of such a nice dream. And you've been along with me, Kitty, all through the Looking Glass world, didn't you know, dear? It is a very inconvenient habit of kittens, Alice had once made that remark, that whenever you say to them, they always purr. If they would only purr for yes and mew for no, or any rule of that sort, she had said, so that one could keep up in conversation. But how can you talk with a person if they always say the same thing? On this occasion, the kitten only purred, and it was impossible to guess whether it meant yes or no. So, Alice hunted among the chessmen on the table till she had found the Red Queen. Then she went down on her knees on the little hearth rug and put the kitten and the queen to look at each other. Now, Kitty, she replied, clapping her hands triumphantly, confess that was what you turned into. But it wouldn't look at it, she said, when she was explaining the things afterward to her sister. It turned away its head and pretended not to see it. But it looked a little ashamed of itself, so I think it must have been the Red Queen. Sit up a little more stiffly, dear, Alice cried with a merry laugh, and curtsy while you're thinking what to purr. It saves time, remember. And she caught up and gave it one little kiss, just in honor of its having been a Red Queen. Snowdrop, my pet, she went on, looking over her shoulder at the white kitten, which was still patiently undergoing its toilet. When will Dinah have finished your white majesty, I wonder? That must be the reason you were so untidy in my dream, Dinah. You know that you are scrubbing a white queen? Really? It's most disrespectful of you. And what did Dinah turn into, I wonder, she prattled on as she settled comfortably down with one elbow on the rug and her chin in her hand to watch the kittens. Tell me, Dinah, did you turn into Humpty Dumpty? I think you did. However, you'd better not mention it to your friends just yet, for I'm not sure. By the way, Kitty, if only you had been really with me in my dream, there was one thing you would have enjoyed. I had a quantity of poetry said to me, all about fishes. Tomorrow morning you shall have a real treat. All the time you're eating your breakfast, I'll repeat the walrus and the carpenter to you, and then you can make believe it's oysters, dear. Now, Kitty, let's consider who it was that dreamed it all. This is a serious question, my dear, and you should not go on licking your paw like that, as if Dinah hadn't washed you this morning. You see, Kitty, it must have been either me or the Red King. He was part of my dream, of course, but then I was part of his dream, too. Was it the Red King, Kitty? You were his wife, my dear, so you ought to know. Oh, Kitty, do help to settle it. I'm sure your paw can wait. But the provoking kitten only began on the other paw and pretended it hadn't heard the question. Which do you think it was? Well, that blew my mind. Through the looking glass, a boat beneath a sunny sky, lingering onward dreamily in an evening of July. Children three that nestled near, eager eye and willing ear, pleased a simple tale to hear. Long has paled that sunny sky, echoes fade and memories die, autumn frosts have slain July. Still she haunts me, phantom-wise, Alice moving under skies, never seen by waking eyes. Children yet the tale to hear, eager eye and willing ear, lovingly shall nestle near. In a wonderland they lie, dreaming as if days go by, dreaming as the summers die. Ever drifting down the stream, lingering in the golden gleam, life, what is it but a dream? Just a random poem in the back, and a bunch of other random poetry from the book. Yeah, I really enjoyed these stories. They were a little bit wonky, I will say, though. A lot of were very hard to follow as the scenes switched so suddenly. Like really mid-chapter is where it went. So, but yeah, I really like that. I like how it ended. But that's a really good question, is whose dream was it? Do we really think it was Alice's dream, or do we think Alice was part of somebody else's dream? Maybe it was Dinah's dream the whole time. Just shifting around like a dream, exactly. And then every time they said mirror world, have you tried it in looking glass world, I remembered everything I just read was backwards. And had I read it forwards, it probably would have made a lot more sense. But everybody was doing everything backwards, and I thought that was really cool. So I do want to make a statement of discovery, is that I know that Disney recently remade Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. However, I now feel that Tim Burton has taken a little liberty in designing Through the Looking Glass and being a story all about the Mad Hatter and his family and conquering time. None of that happened in the book that we just read, and I'm curious, would you have preferred to see that in a movie, what we just read, versus what that movie was? Because I would have really liked to see what we just read in the form of a movie. I think there's a lot of cool, interesting creatures and characters that they can really make up with like CGI and puppetry and things like that. So I was not expecting the rest of the book to be so quick. The Mad Hatter is a great character. I haven't seen the second movie yet, though. Sorry if I ruined it a little bit. He is a great character, and I think that's maybe why they went the direction they did in the movie, because the Mad Hatter had such an instant following. Because not only did it have Johnny Depp backing the character himself, but the Mad Hatter from the original cartoon was always a fan favorite as well. And so they really had all of their chips in the Mad Hatter's basket. And I think it was really good. It was a good movie for what it was. I just wish they had called it something else. They left a lot out of the movie. They left everything out of the movie, almost. There was a couple of things that were in this one that were in the Disney animated movie. Johnny Depp is a dreamboat. I agree with you there. But there was remember the Red Queen was like, you should really curtsy as you talk to her, it saves time, and open your mouth wide, well, that wasn't in the first book, that was in Through the Looking Glass, said by the chess piece, the Red Queen, not the Queen of Hearts, the Red Queen, but they kind of mashed it up. And Humpty Dumpty talking about the unbirthdays, it was him that talked about it in the books versus Mad Hatter in the March Hare. Which I would say, out of all the books that we just read, both of those, I would say that the Tea Party was probably my favorite, as well as the Queens going back and forth with the questions for Alice. I think that was a pretty good scene, too. But is there an old-timey book that y'all want to hear next? Because my go-to is I was going to pick up the first book of The Wizard of Oz. I think that's kind of fantastical, and I think it would be cool to read the original story of The Wizard of Oz, and likewise compare to what the movie became from Frank L. Baum's original version. Let me know what you think about that. We could also explore different Disney fairy tales and do things like Peter Pan. We could read Peter Pan if you would like. I am saving some of the more scarier genres and frightful genres for the Halloween times. October is when I would say we're gonna bust out like Dracula and the ghost stories. I don't want to do that before then. We could read Wicked, but it's a lot too scandalous. That's true. And also Wicked isn't, because I would have to double check, Halien. I'm not sure if it's old enough to be in the public domain yet to read Wicked. I would love to read Wicked because it is one of my favorite books. And I don't know if anybody knew this, but the Wizard of Oz story is actually 15 books long. Definitely too recent, yeah, especially if Homeboy is still alive, although I hope so. But there's plenty of stories from back when. Count of Monte Cristo is great, but super long and a bit dry in the middle, and that's something too. I do want to keep it a little bit more in the fantasy realm, like dragons and munchkins and things as such. Although you're not wrong, Alien, I love the Count of Monte Cristo. But that's exactly how I feel about the book It. I absolutely love the book It, but it was very long, very long. Emma is one of my favorite books, but maybe a bit too just for the girlies. Maybe. But keep them coming. I definitely need all the recommendations. I could meet you halfway, Haley, and we could do a little mashup, because I always thought that Beauty and the Beast was one of my favorite stories, but it's definitely one of those like long lost love kind of stories, and Beauty and the Beast is a very dark story, but we could do that. Also not fantasy. Makes sense. And that's not terrible. Like, reading very real books is going to be a thing. I do want to kind of let you all know, and of course for my Over the Seas community members, it might be a little bit easier. But things are about to change for me next week when it comes to my 9 to 5. And that is, I'm going to be working later every single day. And so I'll be working until 11 p.m. Eastern time, whatever that translates into. And so I do have to kind of think how I want my streaming schedule to be, because everything I do next week, it's going to be after that time. And I know that's really, really late. So I maybe will start flirting with maybe morning streams here in the US. I'm doing a morning stream once a week. Or doubling up on the weekend and doing a Saturday, Sunday stream together. So Hans Christian Andersen collection. I like that idea. I've also thought about the Grimm's Fairy Tales collection. And of course, who would we be if we didn't go through Edgar Allan Poe's stories like The Telltale Heart and The Black Cat? Yeah. And I mean, it was only temporary, Haley, and I just didn't realize temporary meant like 4 months, so it's definitely been more than adjusted, and it's going to be tough to go back, but I think I can make it work. I just hate that it's going to disrupt everybody's schedule by 2 hours. Hans Christian Andersen. Well, this was absolutely fun, and what I'll do is I'll take a lot of our recommendations, and I will make a poll on the page on the channel, and we'll go from there. We'll pick our next book, and I guess it's oh, Haley, and could I would love to read The Odyssey to you guys. The Odyssey is one of my all-time absolute favorite stories, as well as the Iliad. We'd have to start with the Iliad. Greek is fun, and those are both in public domain, Alien. Those are epic poems, actually. Just finished Song of Achilles, nice. D-Fave Odyssey, yeah. You gave me a great idea, because I've been wanting to do it for a while, but I don't want to push what I want to do on everybody, because ultimately you're the ones that are going to want to come and listen to me read it. Les Mis, ooh, Les Miserables. Maybe, we'll put that one in the maybe pile. Papa, can you hear me? Do you want to build a snowman? You don't hear it? You guys are great. You guys are absolutely great. Love Les Mis. Uh-oh. Scarlet Letter. That might be a little too sultry. That's some underlying tones, and we have like grandkids and stuff that come back and watch these, so although if this is something that we do like, not to say that I can't do an adult only book reading stream and I could read a little more sultry stuff. Anne of Green Gables, that's a great idea too. Lori suggested The Giver the other night, and a lot of the like high school stories that we used to read, like Where a Red Fern Grows. The Iliad may also be too sultry. Oh, well, okay, you're not wrong. Those are some pretty sultry stories. Damn, I didn't even think about all the stuff that made that movie adult, made that book adult. But I mean, we read it in high school, so I think it's okay. Sultry, I would get in trouble. Basically all Greek stuff. Yeah, so basically all Greek is off the table. No. I will pre-read it and pre-screen it, and if I have to come up with funny words for the naughty parts, then I will. But you're not wrong. So let's start with The Wizard of Oz. Go lay down, fluffernies. Did you like the story?
I did. I enjoyed it very much.
Good.
Not that I had a choice.
Yeah, I know. You're forced to listen to me. That's so funny, Haley. It is a bit long, but it's so good. And length doesn't matter. What I have to do with these longer books is just determine how many chapters I can do in one time. Because whether it takes 3 episodes, 9 episodes, 2 episodes, the streams are only going to be upward close to 2 hours, so. Cookie words for sultry cards. That's what I was thinking, right? Like, Jigglypuff comes to mind. That would be a good one. But it couldn't be too obvious either. Like, haha, he Dondozo. You guys are funny. Well, I know of one person that is on right now, and that is Bro Rips. Bro Rips is on right now. But I think that's a pretty good place to, he was super wiggly tough. Exactly. She looked at me like Pikachu looks at ketchup. Well, lay down, Fluffernuss. I know you sat right here and listened to the whole story, huh?
I liked it.
I know you did.
You should read one about your dog next.
Should I?
Mm-hmm. Read Old Yeller. I never finished it.
No, you don't want to finish Old Yeller.
Why? It seems like he's gonna be the hero.
Yeah, well. He got a Pikachu. I have to head out for more work. Oh, we're ending right now anyway, Haley, and I appreciate you guys being here and listening to the end of Through the Looking Glass. And we are going to get our next story in line, and I will see you all back here. Come join us on Thursday. If you're here for the reading, come for the reading. Thursdays and Saturdays, we open Pokemon cards, we listen to, or we appreciate the art, we share other creators and their shorts, we do little giveaways, and we play games. So come and play, come and have fun. And I super appreciate y'all making Monday something to look forward to for me. So with that, well, I guess we can go wherever. There's 10 people in here, so if you do want to go, we can go and raid bro. If someone wants to grab his link, I should really grab those links before I go, but I'm never sure if they're going to be on by the time I'm done. And I was expecting to be going for at least another 20 minutes, so. Good night, Haley, and have a great day at work, and I will see you, well, I'm sure I'll see you somewhere tomorrow, if not later today. But super appreciate you all, and remember, your imagination is endless, and I guarantee that if you really, really wanted to, you could create a pretty amazing story yourself, and I think we're going to. So stay tuned, but I think that me and the ghost community have some pretty amazing and talented people, and I think we could all write a pretty incredible story. So we're going to work on that together. Thank you so much for that, Boo. That is Bro Rips. If we are here, we can go raid. If you are going to bed, I only wish that you have the greatest night and sleep well. Pleasant dreams. But we will see you back here on Thursday. And remember, y'all, peace, love, and Pokemon.